the last few months have been incredibly stressful.
Overruled. The Kansas governor blocked on delaying the reopening of schools. What happens now? The mayor, unmasked, and mounting pressure on the police and its chief.
Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Bob and Marlise Gorley, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, the Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, John H. Mize and Bank of America N.A. co-trustees, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nick Haynes, and glad to have you with us on this journey through the news of our week. It's been another week of one major news development after another. Checking in with us to help make sense of it all from KCUR News City Hall reporter Lisa Rodriguez, and from KCTV5 News reporter Casey Jones, from KMBC 9 News Chief Political Reporter Michael Mahoney, and tracking the week's top local stories from behind a microphone at KCMO Talk Radio, Pete Mundo. What a difference a week makes, just days after signing an executive order delaying the reopening of schools. Kansas governor overruled by the Kansas State Board of Education. As part of a law passed by the legislature last month, the 10-member board has the final say on when schools open and close, and they want them open. So what does that mean now if you're a student, a parent, or a teacher in Kansas, Pete Mundo?
Well, it means that now your local school districts are going to make that decision. We saw here locally, Blue Valley basically pushed back to the date that the governor had pinpointed anyway, right after Labor Day. So I think that's going to happen in most of the states, especially parts of the states that have seen larger surpluses of COVID. But don't forget, there are still parts of the state in Western Kansas where there has not been a single case. And you have a tough time for those kids getting rural broadband if you want to do it remotely. So I think it's going to basically break down, as you would expect. Urban, suburban areas will delay it to the governor's wishes, and maybe some of the more rural areas will not.
Blue Valley and Shawnee Mission, Casey already saying, yep, we're going to come back after Labor Day, regardless of what happened this week. And then the Kansas City, Kansas School District saying not only are they coming back after Labor Day, they'll be virtual only for 9 weeks. That means kids there won't go back to school at the earliest until November. When the stay-at-home orders went into effect in March, there was a lot of confusion about which areas were which, what was rules were in which place. Is that going to be the same now here in our metropolitan area, that it's going to be so radically different from one school district to another?
Yeah, it's going to be all over the place because at the end of the day, these are recommendations and not necessarily, they are not mandates. You just got to pay attention to what your school officials say.
Michael.
This is really, Nick, no different than it is at the start of every school year, where various districts come and decide when they're going to start. To Pete's point, however, that there are lots of counties out in rural Kansas without COVID cases. Actually, there are only 3. And the health director, Dr. Lee Norman, is very concerned about the rising spike in COVID cases in Kansas, some of them in rural areas. It's not all just Wyandotte and Leavenworth and Sedgwick. You've still got a problem out in Ford and Finney where the packing plants are. And he was very disappointed at the way that turned out. And it almost felt like on Wednesday, Nick, that cake was baked before they had that meeting. It ended up being a tie vote, 5-5. Tie vote like that, a motion fails. But I think the Kelly administration went into it knowing that it was going to be a close vote at best.
Now, while the Kansas governor is trying to keep kids out of school, the Missouri governor is making headlines for doing the complete opposite. Here's Mike Parson on a St. Louis radio program this week.
These kids have got to get back to school. They're at the lowest risk possible. And if they do get COVID-19, which they will, and they will when they go to school, they're not going to the hospitals. They're not going to have to sit in doctor's office for days. They're going to go home, and they're going to get over it.
So what is it about the governor's remarks, Lisa, that have got so many people upset? Isn't there a sizable portion of Kansas Cityans, Missourians, Kansans for that matter, who agree with him?
I think that the governor's remarks were really, I think they were tone deaf. And I think that you realize that, that children, there are studies that show that the younger children may not transmit as much. But when we talk about coming back to schools, you're not only talking about children, you're talking about the teachers, you're talking about the families that they go home to. And for many families, especially in urban districts, they're living in multi-generational homes with people who may be at risk. And I think that is what kind of really, really hit people the wrong way.
But as Casey even mentioned, even the mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, Quinton Lucas, didn't even say there can't be schools opening right now. It was only a recommendation even from him.
Absolutely. I think that there's immense pressure on administrators to get kids back in the classroom, particularly in Kansas City public schools. They haven't been able, since schools closed, they haven't been able to reach a large chunk of their population. And those are students who may already be at a disadvantage to their suburban school districts, and they risk falling even further and further behind the longer that they are not in classes.
Michael.
A couple of things. Number one, it was an incredibly clumsy statement by the governor, clumsy enough that he had to walk it back in the earlier parts of this week. Number two, Lisa's exactly right on the beam here about the concern about having lots of kids having to rely on distance learning or virtual learning. Kansas was held out early on as a model of how to do this, and now they're admitting that it's not working out well, and that seems to be the consensus around the country.
Michael mentions, KC, the online learning. I just see a new report from the state of Missouri that says 36%, that's 1 in 3 of Missouri children, can't learn from home because they're not digitally connected. If that's the case, doesn't that undermine those plans then to take all of this learning online?
Yeah, absolutely. The digital divide is a big issue and has been a big issue for years and years. I mean, I'm a Google Fiber user, and I pay $80 a month, which a lot of families can't afford to do. And, school districts have been trying to distribute these hotspots in an effort to mitigate that problem. But the issue there is the hotspots have a limited amount of data that they can push out. So even students that are using those hotspots are encountering problems if they want to have a Zoom conversation like this.
Before we move on, I should also point out, though the focus is now on when schools start, we've heard a lot from younger students in our broadcast area when they look at the new plans for the school year starting. They have holiday breaks that are 2 or 3 days long, even like spring breaks that are 2 or 3 days long. There won't be any vacations for anyone during the next school year. Last week, Pete Mundo, Missouri Governor Mike Parson was making headlines for not wearing a mask at a large Cattle Association event. Now Quinton Lucas is getting a public scolding over his failure to mask up while photographed with a large crowd of people at the Lake of the Ozarks over the weekend. In the photo, Lucas is posing with a group of 7 women on a boat dock in the water. None of them are wearing masks as they huddle together for the camera. Is there any difference, though, in how this story is being treated now that it's the mayor of Kansas City in the spotlight and not a Republican state governor?
Well, I think the mayor couldn't win, right? If he doesn't take the photo, then you've got people saying, oh, what a jerk. The guy wouldn't take a picture with us. He takes the photo and it's like, where's your mask? So he actually, through this photo, which I don't blame him. It's just one of those things. You're caught up in the moment. You take the photo, you move on with your day. But he managed to actually, he bothered people across the political ideological spectrum with it. I think it's much to do about nothing. By early next week, we'll all have moved on. Was it handled differently? I guess a little bit, but to me, it was not one of those things of make or break for any politician at all.
We saw in the beginning of that tweet, on the picture we saw, that basically that the rules apply for working people are very different than those in the ruling class there. I mean, will this continue to haunt Mayor Quinton Lucas, Lisa?
Sure, I think that he will always have his critics and that they will always bring up this point. But I also think that the way that we approach this story is very different from when Governor Mike Parson does it. Quinton Lucas is a young, single Black man who is running a major metropolitan area. And I feel like he does get viewed through that scope. People are more skeptical of him. And I'm not sure that we would have reported it in the same way if it was a family man who'd spent his day on the water with his kids and his wife.
Okay. Michael.
Here's the other thing that I think is in people's craw, and I agree with Pete and Lisa on these points. This is not going to be a sustaining problem for him. he said he would get tested. He got tested almost instantly, and he got that result back very quickly. Now, he's the mayor of Kansas City. He could tell the health department, I need a test, we need the results, which is exactly what happened. But this is taking place at a time when a lot of people who want to test, a lot of people who are getting declared positive for this, can't get their test results back in a timely fashion, and that complicates contract tracing. So there's a couple of different do what I say and not what I do elements to this, but it's not long-term damage.
Casey, when Governor Mike Parson was at that Cattle Association event serving up steaks, it was said that he was sending mixed messages. Was Quinton Lucas sending mixed messages this week?
Honestly, I think he was. I think it was just, a lapse of judgment, as he said in his apology. Mike Parson has been in groups of people, and I mean, he hasn't come out publicly and said, I got tested and I'm going to quarantine. But our mayor did.
Well, law enforcement is back in the spotlight this week. Several weeks ago, 3 civil rights groups called for the Kansas City police chief to resign. Their push went nowhere. Now the Kansas City Star editorial board says it's time for Rick Smith to go. The editorial hits as 11 people are arrested for protesting and vandalizing the doors and a statue outside of police headquarters. Among the slogans spray painted on the police memorial was "Abolish KCPD." Is there any evidence, though, that the Star's position is now changing any hearts and minds in Kansas City, Pete?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I mean, here's the thing. I think ultimately this will be on the ballot in November in terms of local control. So that's another issue. But in terms of Rick Smith, I mean, I know that there is some issues with him on the Board of Commissioners. Some people have pushed back more on him than maybe have pre what has happened here the last couple of months. But I don't see overwhelming evidence, even from the mayor, that, he may be dissatisfied with some of how things have been handled, but he has not outwardly said anything publicly about removing Chief Rick Smith. And I think that's where it would have to start. If the mayor were to possibly turn on Rick Smith publicly, then the conversation might pick up some steam because he's on the Board of Commissioners. Until that happens, I don't see anything changing.
Do you see any evidence of that, Lisa?
I think that Pete's right, that until the mayor comes out and expresses true disappointment, true criticism of his chief, I'm not sure that the issue is going anywhere. However, the Star has kind of been building towards this editorial for several weeks, coming out with data and research about how more Black men have been shot by police under this chief's tenure than the previous chief. And so I think they have a platform and they really laid out a case. And I think among the public that is sure to have some influence.
Michael.
Real quick, this all comes down to counting noses, as in counting votes. There are not the votes on the police board right now to dismiss Rick Smith. I don't think there's going to be the votes there anytime future. The Star calling for his resignation is significant in terms of public opinion. I don't think it's going to jeopardize his job as it relates to the Board of Police Commissioners.
Casey, the push to remove Chief Smith as the police chief, of course, comes in a week that sees no stop to a season of killing in Kansas City. The latest victim is a mother pushing her baby in a stroller in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven. She was to learn later that day the gender of her second child. Yes, she was 5 months pregnant. What does changing out the police chief do, if anything, though, to reducing the number of homicides in Kansas City?
So what these justice organizations are saying, and by justice organizations, I mean the Urban League of Kansas City, the NAACP, and also Moore Square. They're saying that changing out the chief could potentially, improve police community relations. And in turn, when you have a better relationship between the police and the community, people will commit fewer crimes. And if crimes are committed, you will have people that, witnesses that want to speak up. A mistrust of law enforcement contributes to a lack of witnesses coming forward, which contributes to all these unsolved homicides. So I think that it would not be an immediate. It's not like you take out the chief and immediately it changes. But the idea from these justice organizations is that the change starts from the top, and they do not agree with the policies and procedures that have been done under Chief Smith.
Casey mentions there the communication between the public and the police. Did that get a lot more complicated this week, Pete, when we have more than 200 federal agents now in town as part of Operation Legend? And one of the first arrests that it made is involving a person who was found in a stolen car that was not part of any homicide case. There is concern that the mission has changed here. This is when they said this was not about patrolling the streets. Are these federal agents now going beyond that and patrolling? And is that causing communication problems now with the public?
Well, I think the communication problem started from the get-go, right? The mayor sent a letter to the governor saying we'd like some help. And then the White House announces 2 weeks ago, hey, we are going to send troops to Kansas City. The mayor didn't know about it. The governor said on my show he was caught off guard by the timing of it. So I think the biggest critique you can have about what has happened the last couple of weeks, from my point of view, is the lack of communication. I thought the mayor should have had a heads up. I thought the governor should have had a heads up. I think that all should have happened, and that has been a breakdown. And as a result, people on both sides of the political aisle have been able to spin the story as they see fit because the communication has been so poor.
Michael.
Attorney General Barr, when he announced the expansion of Operation Legend, really stepped in it when he misspoke and said that there had been 200 arrests in Kansas City as a result of it. Well, that was not the case. It was 200 arrests dating back to a previous program involving the federal agents and crime fighting here in Kansas City. They had to walk that back. And as we sit here on Friday evening, it looks like there has been one set of charges filed against one individual, but the U.S. Attorney's Office here says they have had more arrests than that, but they don't know how many because they haven't seen the paperwork. But this has not been well communicated, and that is being kind.
Casey.
I think a lot of people in the community are skeptical about this whole operation. When you hear more than 200 federal agents coming, especially the Black community that has been historically over-policed and disproportionately arrested and thrown in jail, it's a scary thought. So when you hear all of these mixed messages, it only fuels the fire when it comes to a mistrust of law enforcement.
The boundaries of what should be policed and what shouldn't be is changing. So are the lines over who should be prosecuted and those who should not. This week, we'll have a better sense of what Mayor Quinton Lucas means when he says he wants to decriminalize poverty. He's introduced an ordinance that prohibits the police from arresting Kansas Cityans on low-level violations like excess parking tickets. So what are the implications of that change? Will people stop feeding parking meters, Lisa?
I don't think that people will stop feeding parking meters because you still will get tickets. Those still exist. What he's proposing is that not paying your parking tickets will not eventually land you in jail or for a warrant for your arrest, which is something that does disproportionately affect low-income communities. I could have 10 parking tickets and then, I notice it and I'll scrape it together and I'll make sure it happens. But what a disruption to my life it would be if I got thrown in jail.
But isn't the threat of being arrested, though, what makes all of us follow the laws, Pete Mundo? And by changing that, does that take away from people's willingness to comply with those laws?
I don't think so. To Lisa's point, people are still going to pay their parking, or people are still going to feed the meters, right? They're still going to do it. But I think it's when you go down the conversation of decriminalizing poverty, now what these tickets will do is they'll go to collections, right? So they're still going to have to be paid off in some capacity. You won't go to jail. That's true. I had somebody call up my show last week say that they spent a night in jail because their wife didn't pay a parking ticket they didn't know about. So I agree that's not a good use of police resources. That being said, you have to have deterrence in some capacity. And typically, just based on the nature of how it works, it is likely going to impact somebody of lower income versus higher income.
Casey?
Well, I mean, even when you think about when the mayor introduced this, he said that this would keep 800 people out of jail every year. And when you look at the figures of that, keeping 800 people out of jail, in theory, should save taxpayer money, right? And on top of that, there's implications that come along with, having an arrest record, right? You might not be able to live where you want to live. Maybe you can't work where you want to work. Maybe you can't even go to the school that you want to go to. So I believe that this was a part of, Mayor Lucas's platform when he ran for mayor. I think that he was focused on some sort of criminal justice reform, and we are now seeing where he's introducing this legislation in an effort to have some sort of criminal justice reform.
A quick take on a couple of other stories grabbing the headlines. If you haven't been out to the airport in a while, you may be shocked by the progress underway on the new single terminal. But is that construction now about to hit a major roadblock? There's new controversy and even some protests as the biggest contract to date is awarded to an out-of-town firm. And now a member of the city council has introduced an ordinance to strip the city's aviation director of his powers. Is this a petty disagreement, or could this derail the timeline for completing the new look airport scheduled to open in early 2023 ahead of the NFL draft in Kansas City, Michael?
No, it's not going to delay the development of the airport project unless it runs into some other problems. This won't do it, but this has been a sore spot for minority business owners and for women business owners who do not feel like they're getting their share of the contracts. Pat Klein's job, the aviation director, may be less stable than he'd prefer it.
Is there any evidence that Pat Klein, the aviation director, is now getting the packing boxes and moving out of his office, Lisa?
I can't read into this one necessarily. I think that he's had to defend these decisions before the council many times. I do think there is growing frustration there. The city council did put off that discussion this week, so I think early next month will be a better time to read kind of where the feeling is here.
If you travel past, by the way, Johnson County Community College this weekend, check to see if there's any workers in cranes removing big signs. The college just announced they are renaming the Carlson Center after receiving a $1 million donation from the founder of an Overland Park-based financial services company called Midwest Trust. The performing arts venue will now be named, yes, you guessed it, Midwest Trust Center. The name Carlson has caused problems for the college for more than a decade. Chuck Carlson was the longtime college president who abruptly retired in 2006 amid allegations of sexual harassment. What if Kansas City, though, had used that approach with the outcry over the J.C. Nichols fountain, Pete? Would Kansas Cityans have thought, if they decided to dump the name of the problem develop and say, hey, we're going to call it the Cerner fountain because they're giving us $1 million, would there be outcry over that?
Probably, but it's brilliant, Nick. I mean, cities need the money. No one can agree on what to name anything. Raise some money, raise some tax dollars, close the help with the budget, and maybe in the end you can lower some taxes out of this. I think it's a great idea. It's long overdue, man.
Lisa?
I think that there would have been a lot of pushback had they gone this route with J.C. Nichols Fountain. I think it's not uncommon for colleges and for hospitals to name wings and buildings after major donors, but then the J.C. Nichols Fountain, the fountain that was there, was a very recognizable, iconic place in Kansas City, and also a place where people gather for protest and for free speech. And I think that naming it after a deep-pocketed donor misses the mark.
Michael.
You want to see pushback on naming rights? Let's wait until they try it at Arrowhead or at Kauffman Stadium.
All righty. When you put a program like this together every week, you can't get to every major headline making news in Kansas City. What was the big story we missed? The Royals finally returned, but does it look and sound a whole lot different without fans? The Metro hosting its biggest sporting event since the pandemic began. NASCAR back in action at the Kansas Speedway. Lots of roaring engines, but no fans in the stands. It doesn't happen until the end of September, but organizers of the Plaza Art Fair are taking no chances. This year's event cancelled. Online pet retailer Chewy.com announcing it's bringing 1,600 new jobs to KC as it prepares to open a distribution center in Belton. Sunday marks 30 years since passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The milestone hits as reports claim the disabled have been the pandemic's forgotten victims. Advance in-person voting begins in Kansas. Election officials on both sides of state line making it clear you do not have to wear a mask to vote. And in the season of great change, here's another one. This week the name KCPT disappears. Get ready for Kansas City PBS. All righty, did you pick one of those stories or something completely different, Pete Mundo?
Completely different, Nick. I used this 6 weeks ago, and I didn't think we'd still have to use it today, but it's the CARES Act money that KCMO still does not have from Jackson County. Mayor Lucas said on my show again this week And he mentioned it when talking about the schools. They need that money. Jackson County really is not, giving them that money. And it is a complete failure of the Jackson County executive branch that this is continuing to happen.
Michael Mahoney.
Two things, one on the list, one not. Baseball is back. It's America's summertime game. It's long been missed. Secondly, the political community's eyes are turning to the Kansas Republican Senate primary. There are more third-party groups getting involved. The race has been intense, and keep your eye on it because a lot of people in Washington are right now.
Casey Jones.
UMKC just came out with a study that showed who exactly throughout our region benefited from the payroll protection program, the federal money that was supposed to keep businesses from going under in the pandemic. And the data just came out, and out of 4,600 PPP loans, only 24 went to Black-owned businesses, 34 to Hispanic-owned businesses, 33 to Asian-owned businesses, and 250 to women-owned businesses. That is going to face a lot of scrutiny as we're moving forward, and we learn about, how many of these businesses actually end up closing. And then I think that's going to raise the question, what's next to help these businesses stay alive? Because we know that small businesses are really, the heart of our community.
Thank you very much. Lisa Rodriguez.
I think that we've seen new spikes of COVID-19 cases across in the metro, in Missouri, in Kansas, and still in Missouri this week, they did not have any access to their data on hospitalizations and on whether they can actually handle these new waves of COVID-19 cases. I think that is crucial that we have that information. And as of this week, Missouri's still in the dark.
And on that, we will say our week has been reviewed. Thank you to Casey Jones from KCTV5 for checking in with us, along with KCUR's Lisa Rodriguez, Michael Mahoney from KMBC 9 News, and 6 to 10 weekday mornings on KCMO Talk Radio, Pete Mundo. And I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, scratch that, here at Kansas City PBS. Keep calm and carry on.